Audrey, did you just tell everyone to check their admission tickets? Derek Walsh called from the trophy case, loud enough for half the senior hallway to hear. Audrey Hart turned toward me with both hands pressed to her chest, her eyes wide, her voice sweet and shaking. Audrey said softly, "Ethan, check yours too, the National Scholar exam starts soon. You know how important this is." I stood outside the gym doors with a clear pencil bag in one hand and my phone in the other. Around us, seniors from Westbridge High were lined up with IDs, calculators, clear bags, and pale faces. This was the exam everyone had been talking about since junior year. Top scores meant national recognition, scholarship money, and another shiny line on college files. To some students, this test felt like a door. To me, it was already a hallway I had walked past. Derek leaned against the trophy case, arms crossed over his varsity jacket, smiling too early. Audrey stood close enough to touch my sleeve. Her perfume was sharp and expensive, her smile was gentle, but her eyes kept dropping to my backpack. Mike Reynolds, my best friend, stood beside me chewing on the straw of a chocolate milk. Mike said, "We checked everything this morning." Audrey gave him a tight little laugh. Audrey said, "Mike, I'm just trying to help. Ethan gets focused and forgets small things." Derek laughed. Derek said, "Yeah, genius types forget the basics. One missing paper, and the whole dream dies." A few students turned. That was the hook. Derek wanted witnesses before the knife came out. Audrey reached toward my backpack strap. Audrey said, "Just check, Ethan, please, it'll make me feel better." I set my clear pencil bag on the windowsill and unzipped the front pocket of my backpack. Empty. I checked the side pocket. Empty. I checked the folder sleeve. Empty. Audrey's hand flew to her mouth. Audrey gasped, "No, Ethan, where is it?" Derek pushed off the trophy case and clapped once. Derek said loudly, "No way." Top student lost his admission ticket. The hallway quieted fast. Phones began rising. Derek pointed at my backpack like he had caught me stealing. Derek said, "All that talk about top universities, full rides, national rankings, and you can't even keep one piece of paper." Audrey stepped closer, eyes wet now, performance fully loaded. Audrey whispered, "I told you last night I could keep it safe for you. Why didn't you let me?" Mike lowered his chocolate milk. Mike said, "Funny. That line sounds rehearsed." Derek snapped, "Shut up, Reynolds." Audrey looked at me like she was already mourning my future. Audrey said, "Maybe you left it at home, maybe your dad can drive it over." Derek laughed harder. Derek said, "Exam starts in 18 minutes. His dad drives trucks, right? Maybe he can fly." Some students laughed. Some looked uncomfortable. Mr. Grant, the senior counselor, came out of the office hallway with a clipboard, saw the crowd, and frowned. "Mr. Grant said, what is going on?" Derek answered before I could. Derek said, "Ethan lost his admission ticket." Audrey said quickly, "I'm worried about him. He won't be allowed inside without it." Mr. Grant's face tightened with professional disappointment. Mr. Grant said, "Ethan, this is why we tell seniors to prepare materials the night before." I looked at him, then at Audrey, then at Derek's phone already pointed at my face. I said calmly, "You're right, preparation matters." Derek smirked. Derek said, "That calm act won't get you through the door." I opened the back sleeve of my binder and pulled out a white envelope with the Millstone University crest printed on the corner. Then I pulled out a laminated folder from inside it. I held up a fresh admission ticket with a new barcode, a red, reissued, stamp, and an email confirmation clipped behind it. I said, "Good thing the exam center reissued mine at 6:18 this morning." The hallway went silent so fast the air changed. Derek's smile froze. Audrey's hand dropped from her mouth. Mr. Grant blinked at the ticket. Mike leaned in and read the stamp. Mike said, "That is a beautiful piece of paper." Audrey whispered, "You had another one." I looked at her. I said, "I had a replacement. The old one was voided before school started." Derek's face shifted. Derek said, "Why would you need a replacement unless you lost the first one?" I held up my phone. I said, "Because someone was very interested in the first one." Audrey took half a step back. Audrey said, "What does that mean?" I said, "It means I'm taking the exam." Vice Principal Cole stood at the gym entrance with a scanner tablet. Cole said, "Students with valid admission tickets, line up." I walked toward him and handed him my ID and reissued ticket. He scanned the barcode. The tablet beeped green. Cole said, "Valid. You're cleared." Derek stepped forward. Derek said, "Maybe check if it's fake. Anybody can print paper." Cole looked at him. Cole said, "It scanned." Through the exam system, Mike lifted his phone. Mike said, "Derek, you sound more upset than a guy who only wanted fairness." Derek glared at him. Audrey touched my sleeve again. Audrey said quietly, "Ethan, wait, we need to talk." I looked down at her fingers until she let go. I said, "After the exam." Audrey's voice cracked. Audrey said, "You're scaring me." I looked at Derek's camera. I said clearly, "I am taking a valid exam with a valid ticket. If that scares anyone, they should ask themselves why." Then I walked through the gym doors. The proctor pointed me toward seat 14C. I sat down, placed my clear bag on the desk, and waited while the rest of the seniors entered. Mike sat 2 rows behind me. He caught my eye and mouthed, "Trap." I did not answer. I only tapped the red stamp on the ticket once before putting it flat on the desk. The exam proctor said, "Begin." Pencils moved. Pages turned. No one stole this hour from me. The exam lasted 3 hours and 30 minutes. The gym smelled like old varnish, pencil shavings, and panic. Students coughed, erased, shifted in their seats, and stared at pages like the pages owed them money. I answered question after question without looking toward the door. The missing old ticket did not matter. The test itself did not matter the way Audrey thought it did. 6 weeks earlier, Millstone University had sent me early admission through its engineering honors pathway. 2 weeks after that, the National Young Innovators Foundation confirmed my full tuition award based on my state engineering title, research prototype, and direct faculty review. The exam today could boost my public ranking, but it could not erase the offer already signed, sealed, and verified. Audrey did not know that. Derek did not know that. Mr. Grant knew part of it, but not the full scholarship confirmation. I had kept it quiet because I wanted clean paperwork before the senior award ceremony. Audrey thought my future was printed on one admission ticket. Derek thought stealing paper could steal years. At 11:58, the proctor called time. I put down my pencil. I handed in the answer sheet, the booklet, and the scratch paper. When I walked into the hallway, the atmosphere had changed from excited to poisonous. Audrey stood by the office door, arms wrapped around herself. Derek stood near the trophy case, pretending to scroll his phone. Mr. Grant stood between them, clipboard tight in his hands. Principal Marsh's office door was open. Mike came out behind me and slapped my shoulder. Mike said loudly, "Clean exam, clean ticket, dirty hallway." Audrey rushed toward me. Audrey said, "Ethan, why didn't you tell me you had a replacement?" I said, "Why did you need to know?" She flinched. Audrey said, "Because I was worried." Derek barked, "He's trying to make you look guilty." I turned to him. "You looked guilty before I said anything." Mr. Grant stepped in, voice low and tense. Mr. Grant said, "Ethan, there has been concern about the accusation you implied this morning." I said, "Good, let's review evidence." Audrey's face went pale. Mr. Grant frowned. "Evidence." Mike lifted his phone. Mike said, "I love evidence mornings." Mr. Grant snapped, "Mike, put that away." Mike said, "Derek recorded Ethan when he thought the ticket was gone. I'm keeping the wide shot." Principal Marsh stepped into the hallway. Principal Marsh said, "All of you, office, now." In the conference room, Audrey sat beside Mr. Grant. Derek sat with one ankle on his knee until Principal Marsh told him to sit properly. Mr. Walsh, Derek's father, arrived in 12 minutes wearing a gray suit and carrying the expression of a man used to turning school rules into polite suggestions. Audrey's mother arrived 3 minutes later, sunglasses still on though the room had no sun. My parents were called too. Dad came from the freight yard in his work jacket. Mom came from the hospital in her cleaning uniform, one thumb wrapped in a bandage. MS. Harper entered last with her laptop bag and a folder. Principal Marsh placed both hands flat on the table. Principal Marsh said, "We need to establish what happened with Ethan's original admission ticket." Audrey leaned forward, eyes already wet. Audrey said, "I don't know why he's acting like I did something. I only reminded him to check it." I opened my folder and slid the first printed screenshot across the table. I said, "Yesterday at 4:12 p.m., Audrey texted me, 'You're stressed, let me hold your admission ticket tonight so you don't misplace it.'" Mom's eyes narrowed. Dad looked at Audrey without speaking. Audrey said quickly, "That was caring." I slid the next screenshot across. I said, "At 4:16 p.m., I said no." Mike, sitting against the wall, said, "Healthy boundary." Principal Marsh gave him a look. Mike shut his mouth and made a zipper motion. I slid the third page. At 4:31 p.m., Derek texted Audrey during study hall. Mike captured the screen because Derek showed Tyler the message. Derek sat up. Derek snapped. "That's private, Ms. Harper said. "You displayed it to another student in a classroom, Mr. Walsh said sharply. "A partial screenshot is not evidence of intent." Principal Marsh looked at the page. The visible message preview read, "If he misses the ticket, he misses the exam. Simple." Audrey closed her eyes. Derek said, "That could mean anything." Mike whispered, "It means words." Principal Marsh said, "Mike." Mike nodded. Silent words. I opened my laptop and turned it toward the room. At 5:37 p.m., while I was in Ms. Harper's lab, Audrey approached my locker. My backpack was hanging on the storage hook because bags aren't allowed at the lab benches. She opened the side pocket and removed the original admission ticket. Audrey whispered, "No." The video played without mercy. Audrey looked left. Audrey looked right. Audrey unzipped my backpack pocket. Audrey pulled out the ticket, folded it twice, and slid it into her binder. Mrs. Hart covered her mouth. Mr. Walsh looked at Derek. Derek looked at the table. Mr. Grant rubbed his forehead. Audrey said weakly, "I was going to keep it safe." I said, "Then why didn't you give it back this morning?" She did not answer. Principal Marsh looked at Audrey. Principal Marsh said, "Where is the original ticket now?" Audrey said, "I don't have it." I opened another sleeve and removed a photo of the old ticket. The original ticket had a blue UV mark across the back, a tiny tear near the lower right corner, and a diagonal fold. I marked it before leaving it in my bag because Audrey had already asked to hold it and Derek had already sent that message. Derek laughed harshly. Derek said, "So you set her up?" I looked at him. "No, I marked my property after you discussed making me miss an exam." Mr. Walsh leaned forward. "Young man, you seem very comfortable manufacturing a scene." Dad turned toward him. Dad said, "Your son seemed comfortable enjoying it." Mr. Walsh glared. Dad did not blink. Principal Marsh said, "We need the ticket." Audrey shook her head fast. Audrey said, "I don't have it." Ms. Harper said, "Then a locker inspection will clarify that." Audrey stood so quickly her chair scraped. Audrey cried, "You can't search my locker." Principal Marsh said, "Under exam integrity review, school lockers may be inspected." Mr. Walsh said, "Not without proper process." Principal Marsh looked at him. "This is proper process. The locker is school property." Audrey's mother whispered, "Audrey, if you have it, just say so." Audrey's face crumpled. Audrey said, "I don't." Vice Principal Cole stood. "I'll conduct the search with Principal Marsh, Ms. Harper, Officer Lane, Audrey, and her parent present." I stayed in the conference room with Mom, Dad, Mike, Mr. Grant, Derek, and Mr. Walsh while they went down the hall. Derek leaned back and tried to recover his arrogance. Derek said, "You really think Audrey needed to steal from you?" I said, "She did steal from me." Derek said, "You're not that important." Mom turned toward him. Mom said, "Then why were you smiling when he couldn't find the ticket?" Derek's mouth closed. Mike whispered, "Mrs. Miller with the cross-examination." Dad said, "Mike." Mike sat straighter. 11 minutes later, the office door opened. Audrey came in first, crying hard now. Principal Marsh followed with a clear evidence sleeve in her hand. Inside was the original admission ticket, blue UV mark, tiny tear, diagonal fold. It had been hidden inside Audrey's college essay binder, behind a plastic page labeled, "Personal Statement." Principal Marsh placed it in the middle of the table. The room did not need a speech. The paper told the story. Audrey collapsed into her chair, both hands over her face. Mrs. Hart sat beside her and whispered, "Why?" Audrey shook her head. Audrey cried, "I didn't want to hurt him. I just needed him to miss one exam." Dad let out a low breath. Mom's face hardened. Mr. Grant said, "Audrey, stop talking until we understand the context." I said, "The context is on the table." Mr. Walsh said, "This may still be a relationship misunderstanding." Mike laughed once before he could stop himself. Mike said, "She misunderstood his ticket into her locker." Principal Marsh said, "Mike." Mike raised both hands. "Sorry, evidence made me emotional." Officer Lane entered with the search log. Officer Lane said, "The ticket was recovered from Audrey Hart's assigned locker. Inside her personal binder, the original ticket is void due to reissue." Audrey looked up through tears. Audrey said, "Void?" I nodded. Void, Audrey whispered. So it didn't matter, I said, not to the exam, it mattered to the truth. Derek slapped the table. Derek said, you knew it was void and let this happen. I turned to him. You mean I let Audrey steal something useless enough to expose what she was trying to do? Derek pointed at me. That's entrapment. Ms. Harper said. No. Entrapment requires inducing someone to commit an act they were not already willing to commit. Audrey asked to hold the ticket before Ethan marked it. You texted about him missing it before she took it. Mr. Walsh looked at her. Are you a lawyer? Ms. Harper said. No, I teach students to read definitions. Mike whispered. Devastating. Mr. Grant tried to regain control. Mr. Grant said, even if Audrey made a serious mistake, Ethan suffered no actual exam loss. He took the exam, his ticket was valid. I looked at Mr. Grant. Damage is not only what she succeeded in taking, it is also what she tried to take. The room quieted. Mom nodded once. Dad kept his eyes on Mr. Grant. Principal Marsh wrote that line down. Audrey wiped her face and suddenly turned toward me, anger cutting through the tears. Audrey said, you were already admitted, weren't you? Mr. Grant looked up. Derek frowned. Mr. Walsh's eyes narrowed. Audrey pointed at the millstone envelope sticking out of my folder. Audrey said, that's why you were so calm, you knew the exam didn't matter. Derek looked at me. What is she talking about? I opened the envelope and removed the official letter. I placed it beside the stolen ticket. The Millstone University crest sat black and gold at the top. I said, Millstone University Engineering Honors Program, early admission, full tuition package through the National Young Innovators Foundation, confirmed 2 weeks ago. Mike leaned back with a grin. Mike said, top university had already signed the man. Audrey stared at the letter like it had insulted her. Derek said, you got into Millstone already? I said, yes. Audrey whispered, then the exam was optional. I said, for me, mostly, for school ranking, it still counted, for scholarship prestige, it helped, for my future, the core decision was already made. Audrey's breathing changed. Audrey said, you didn't tell me. I said, you didn't ask, you were busy asking for my ticket. Mr. Grant lifted the letter, read the first paragraph, and set it down slowly. Mr. Grant said, Ethan, the school should have been informed earlier for reporting purposes. Ms. Harper said, the family informed me and the scholarship coordinator. The final financial package was still pending certification. That is normal, Dad said, and private. Audrey's tears stopped for a second. Her face twisted. Audrey said, so you knew I couldn't really stop you? I leaned forward. No. I knew you shouldn't be trying. Derek stood up. Derek said, this whole thing is a trap. He let Audrey panic over a ticket he didn't need. I stood too. She stole it before she knew that. Mike stood halfway out of his chair. Mike said, and you cheered before you knew that. Mr. Walsh grabbed Derek's sleeve. Sit down. Derek shook him off. No, they're making Audrey look evil because Ethan wanted a big reveal. Principal Marsh looked at Derek. Derek, did you send the message that said, if he misses the ticket, he misses the exam? Derek said. Nothing. Principal Marsh repeated. Did you send it? Derek said. It was a joke. Officer Lane said. Then why did Audrey take the ticket after that joke? No answer. Audrey looked at Derek. Derek looked away. That was the first time Audrey saw the bottom under her feet. Principal Marsh announced that Audrey would be placed under immediate disciplinary review for theft of exam property and attempted interference with a national exam. Derek would be reviewed for conspiracy and intimidation. My exam status remained valid. My graduation and scholarship certification remained unaffected. Audrey whispered, attempted interference. Principal Marsh said, yes, Ethan's replacement ticket prevented the harm, but it does not erase the attempt. Audrey began crying again. But this time no one moved to stop the room from hearing it. By lunch, the school had already heard 3 versions. Audrey protected Ethan's ticket and got framed. Ethan tricked Audrey with a fake ticket. Derek exposed Ethan's setup. Then Mike posted nothing, which made people more nervous. I told him to wait until the first official record was in writing. He looked pained. Mike said, you are denying the people educational content. I said, I'm preserving the case. He sighed. Responsible revenge. My least favorite genre. Audrey did not wait. At 1:12 p.m., she posted a story from her bedroom. Her eyes were red. Her voice shook. Audrey said, I made one mistake because I was scared and confused. Someone I trusted hid the truth from me, then watched me fall. She did not say ticket, she did not say theft, she did not say millstone. Derek reposted it with, "Funny how perfect people create traps." That was enough. I opened my laptop at the kitchen table after school. Mom stood behind me, Dad sat across from me, Mike joined by video call, already vibrating with rage. Mike said, "Drop the folder." Mom said, "Facts only." Dad said, "Dates, not insults." I uploaded a clean timeline. Screenshot. Audrey asking to hold my ticket. Screenshot. Derek's message preview. Security clip. Audrey taking the ticket from my backpack. Replacement ticket confirmation. 6:18 a.m. Search record. Original ticket found in Audrey's locker. Millstone admission letter with personal details blurred. My caption said, "Audrey took my original admission ticket. It was already void. I took the exam with a valid reissued ticket. I had already been admitted to Millstone. Her attempt did not stop my future, but it showed what she was willing to do." Mike posted his hallway footage 2 minutes later. His caption said, "Derek laughed before Ethan found the replacement ticket. Watch his face." The internet inside Westbridge flipped first. The comments went from "Ethan trapped her" to "She stole a void ticket" to "She tried to ruin him and failed." Someone clipped Audrey's line from the office hallway when she shouted, "You were already admitted, weren't you?" Another student posted Derek smiling in the morning when he thought I was missing the ticket. By 7 p.m., a local student drama page picked it up. By 9 p.m., a college admissions commentary account posted, "Trying to sabotage a classmate's exam ticket is not a relationship mistake, it is academic interference." Audrey deleted her story. Screenshots remained. Derek posted, "Private relationship drama shouldn't be blasted online." Mike replied, "Then don't perform it in a hallway with your phone out." Derek blocked him. Audrey called me at 9:43. I did not answer. She texted, "You didn't have to include Millstone." I replied, "You claimed I hid the truth. I showed the truth." She wrote, "Everyone thinks I'm evil." I replied, "You stole my ticket." She wrote, "It didn't matter. I typed one sentence and sent it. It mattered to you when you took it." She did not answer. Mom read the exchange over my shoulder and said, "That was enough." Dad said, "More than enough." Mike on video call raised his soda. Mike said, "To void paper and full rides." Mom said, "Mike, don't toast people's downfall." Mike lowered the soda. "To exam integrity." Mom said, "Better." The next morning, Audrey arrived at school with no makeup, no usual crowd, and no Derek. Students watched her cross the hallway like she was carrying the stolen ticket in both hands. Amber walked beside her but kept looking around, calculating how much friendship still cost. Derek came later in sunglasses though the hallway had no sun. He saw me by the senior lockers and walked straight over. Derek said, "You think posting that makes you untouchable?" I closed my locker. "No, the admission letter did that part." Students nearby reacted with a low wave of laughter. Derek's jaw tightened. Derek said, "Millstone can still hear about your character." Mike stepped out from behind me with his phone already out. Mike said, "Threatening a full-ride student near cameras before first period. Bold strategy." Derek glared, "Always filming like a coward." I pointed at the security dome above us. "So is the school." Derek stepped back half a pace. Audrey came up behind him. Audrey said quietly, "Stop." Derek snapped, "Don't tell me what to do." Audrey flinched. I looked at her. "That your new support system?" Derek turned on me. "Shut your mouth." Audrey said louder, "Derek, stop. You told me it would work." The hallway froze. Derek's head snapped toward her. Mike whispered, "And there it is." Derek said, "I told you to keep him from the exam. You're the one who got caught." Audrey's mouth opened. Amber stepped back. Students made that harsh collective sound that means a private truth just became public. Vice Principal Cole appeared from the office hallway. Cole said, "Derek, Audrey, office, now." Derek pointed at me. "He's baiting us." Cole said, "Your mouths are doing fine without help." Mike whispered, "Cole has bars." Audrey walked past me toward the office, eyes on the floor. Derek followed, angry and exposed. The formal hearing happened Friday morning. The district academic integrity officer, Dr. Levin, joined by video. The national exam coordinator sent a written statement confirming my replacement ticket was valid and the old barcode had been voided before the exam began. Millstone University's admissions liaison confirmed, in writing, that my early admission and scholarship package were based on prior academic achievement, engineering competition results, faculty review, and foundation endorsement. The exam could add honor recognition but was not required for my admission. Audrey came with both parents and an attorney. Derek came with his father and a lawyer who looked like he charged by the eyebrow raise. I came with my parents, Ms. Harper, and Mike as a witness. Mr. Grant sat near the wall with a folder and a tired face. Principal Marsh opened with a summary. Principal Marsh said, "We are reviewing theft of an exam admission ticket, attempted academic interference, public false claims, and possible student conspiracy." Audrey's attorney immediately tried to soften the word theft. Attorney said, Audrey believed she was safeguarding the ticket for a partner under stress. Dr. Levin said, then why did she deny possession and hide it in her locker? The attorney said, a frightened teenager made a poor choice. Dad muttered, after another poor choice. Mom put a hand on his arm. Derek's attorney said, there is no actual harm. Ethan Miller took the exam, and by his own admission had already secured a top university offer. I leaned forward. The attempt was the harm. Dr. Levin nodded slightly. Audrey's attorney asked me, why did you not tell Audrey you had already been admitted? I said, my admission letter was not her property. Attorney said, but she was your girlfriend. I said, she was also the person asking to hold my ticket. Audrey looked down. Attorney said, so you suspected her? I said, I had reason. Attorney said, and instead of directly confronting her, you allowed the situation to unfold. I said, I reported concern to Ms. Harper, contacted the exam center, voided the old ticket, and used a valid replacement. Audrey had every chance not to steal. Mike whispered, also every chance to give it back. Dr. Levin said, Mr. Reynolds. Mike raised both hands. Sorry. Dr. Levin asked Audrey directly, did you remove Ethan Miller's original admission ticket from his backpack? Audrey's voice was barely audible. Audrey said, yes. Dr. Levin asked, did he give you permission? Audrey said, no. Dr. Levin asked, did you return it before the exam? Audrey shook her head. Dr. Levin asked, where was it found? Audrey whispered, my locker. Dr. Levin asked, why did you take it? Audrey started crying. Audrey said, everyone kept saying Ethan was perfect. He already had projects, awards, teachers, everything. I was slipping. Derek said if he missed the exam, people would see he wasn't untouchable. Mrs. Hart covered her mouth. Mr. Hart stared at the table. Derek said sharply, don't blame me. Audrey turned on him. Audrey said, you sent the message. You told me he'd still be fine, just embarrassed. Derek said, I didn't tell you to hide it in your locker. Audrey said, you told me not to give it back. Derek's father grabbed his sleeve. Derek shook him off. Derek said, she wanted the ranking spot. She was jealous. Audrey shouted, because you kept saying he made me look small. The hearing room went silent. Dr. Levin looked at Principal Marsh. Principal Marsh wrote something down. Ms. Harper said quietly, there is your intent. Mr. Grant tried to intervene. Mr. Grant said, while the behavior is serious, we should consider that no exam result was lost. Audrey is an otherwise strong student under pressure. Derek too has athletic commitments and external demands. Mom turned toward him. Mom said, why do their pressures matter more than my son's future? Mr. Grant said, that is not what I meant. Dad said, it's what keeps coming out. Dr. Levin asked Mr. Grant, did you know Ethan had already been admitted to Millstone? Mr. Grant hesitated. I knew he had a strong likelihood. Ms. Harper placed a paper on the table. I informed the scholarship office and Principal Marsh of his confirmed early admission after the financial package was verified. Mr. Grant was copied on the certification calendar. The family requested privacy until formal announcement. Mr. Grant looked at the paper and said nothing. Dr. Levin asked, did Audrey have any legitimate reason to possess Ethan's ticket? Mr. Grant said, no. Audrey's attorney asked for leniency. Derek's attorney asked to separate Derek's case from Audrey's actions. Dr. Levin refused to decide immediately. The panel took 41 minutes. We waited in the hallway. Audrey sat on a bench with her mother, crying into a tissue. Derek stood near the vending machine while his father spoke angrily into a phone. Mike bought a grape soda and handed it to me. Mike said, victory carbonation, pending verdict. I said, too early. Mike shrugged, pre-victory hydration. When we went back in, Principal Marsh read the findings. Audrey Hart committed theft of exam materials and attempted academic interference. She would be removed from senior honors consideration, lose school-certified recommendation support for competitive scholarships, and have a conduct notice sent where required for applications using Westbridge certification. Derek Walsh engaged in conspiracy to interfere with a student's exam access and public harassment. His athletic recommendation and senior privileges would be suspended pending board review. Ethan Miller's exam, graduation status, and scholarship certification remained valid and unaffected. Mr. Grant's handling of the incident would be reviewed by the district. Audrey made a sound like air leaving a tire. Derek slammed his hand on the table. Mr. Walsh snapped. "This is excessive," Dad said, trying to steal a future. "Usually is." The room went quiet. Audrey looked at me through tears. Audrey said, "You didn't even need the exam." I stood and picked up my folder. I said, "You didn't know that when you stole the ticket." She whispered, "So the ticket never mattered." I looked at the voided paper in the evidence sleeve. I said, "To me, no, to you. It proved who you were." Audrey covered her face. Derek stared at the floor. I left with my parents and did not look back. After the hearing, the story grew. Beyond Westbridge, a student page called it, "The Ticket That Didn't Matter." A local admissions podcast picked it up and talked about academic sabotage. A short-form commentary account posted the line, "She stole his exam ticket, but his future had already been signed." Mike sent me that one with 37 fire emojis. Audrey's college advice account lost followers by the hour. People found old videos of her talking about supportive relationships, while taking credit for study guides I had made. Former classmates posted stories about her asking for examples, and turning them into finished submissions. One group project partner posted screenshots where Audrey said, "Ethan will clean it up later." Audrey tried one more apology video. She sat in her bedroom with no music and no comments enabled. Audrey said, "I made a terrible mistake under pressure. I never wanted to destroy anyone's future." The backlash came because of that last line. People replied with the security clip. They replied with Derek's message. They replied with the ticket in her locker. "What did you want if not that?" became the top comment under reposts. Derek went silent for 2 days, then posted, "People love watching a rich kid fall." Mike replied from a burner account he swore was not his. "People love when evidence lands." I told him to stop, he said. "I will stop after one more civic contribution." The school halls changed. Audrey no longer moved with a crowd. Amber walked with her sometimes, but only when cameras were not around. Derek's football friends stopped laughing at his jokes because scouts had started asking about the conduct review. Mr. Grant stopped making eye contact with me. Principal Marsh announced a new exam material protocol. Students must keep their own admission documents. No peer safekeeping. Emergency reissue instructions posted in every senior classroom. And any allegation involving exam access must be reviewed before disciplinary action. Mike said the policy should be named "Don't Steal Tickets." Ms. Harper said policy names require dignity. Mike suggested the Hart-Walsh Paperwork Integrity Act. Ms. Harper said, "Closer, but still no." The top university reveal happened at senior awards night. Millstone University sent an admissions liaison, Mr. Reeves. Because my engineering prototype had won state recognition and the foundation wanted a public presentation, nobody told Audrey, nobody told Derek. The gym filled with parents, students, teachers, and that tense quiet people bring when they know an announcement may hurt someone specific. Mom wore her blue dress. Dad wore a button-down shirt he said made him look like he was selling insurance to truck drivers. Mike sat behind them with his mother, whispering commentary until she pinched his sleeve. Audrey sat near the back with her parents. No honor cord, no bright smile. Derek sat on the aisle with his father, arms crossed. Principal Marsh stepped to the podium and said, "Tonight we recognize achievement earned through work, integrity, and perseverance." Ms. Harper called my name first for the engineering award. I walked across the stage. The applause started strong. Mom stood. Dad clapped with both hands. Mike shouted, "Void ticket, valid future." His mother slapped his arm, but people laughed. Ms. Harper handed me the plaque and whispered, "Keep walking forward." I said, "Yes, ma'am." Then Principal Marsh introduced Mr. Reeves from Millstone. He stepped to the microphone, opened a folder, and said, Millstone University is proud to welcome Ethan Miller into the Engineering Honors Program with full tuition support through the National Young Innovators Foundation. The gym erupted. I saw Audrey's face turn blank. Derek leaned forward like he had heard wrong. Mr. Reeves continued. Ethan's admission was secured before the National Scholar exam through faculty review of his engineering prototype, academic record, and state-level innovation work. The exam was not required for his admission. That sentence traveled through the gym like electricity. Audrey's mother closed her eyes. Derek stared at the floor. Mr. Reeves held out a letter. I took it on stage. Cameras flashed. Mom cried. Dad wiped his face and pretended it was sweat. Mike yelled, "Paper beats paper." Nobody knew what he meant except me. After the ceremony, Audrey approached near the side hallway, shaking. Audrey said, "So it really never mattered." I held the Millstone folder under one arm. I said, "The ticket didn't." Audrey's eyes filled. Audrey said, "Then why didn't you just tell me?" I wouldn't have done it. I looked at her. "You needed my admission letter to stop you from stealing." She flinched. Audrey said, "I was scared." I said, "Of losing to me?" She whispered, "Of being nothing next to you?" I said, "So you tried to make me nothing." Derek came up behind her. Derek said, "Don't beg him." Audrey turned on him. Audrey said, "You said it would just humble him." Derek scoffed, "It should have." Mike appeared beside me. Mike said, "Hard to humble a guy with a full ride and receipts." Derek pointed at him. Derek said, "Keep talking." Mr. Reeves, still nearby, turned his head. Derek saw the university badge and shut his mouth. Audrey looked at me one last time. Audrey said, "I'm sorry." I said, "Tell the review board the truth. That would be useful." She nodded once and walked away from Derek. Not with him. Derek tried the pressure route anyway. The next afternoon, he waited outside Lawson's garage, where I worked after school. His black SUV blocked the side exit. Mr. Lawson was inside arguing with a transmission. Mike was sweeping the same square of concrete for 20 minutes because he said stakeouts required props. Derek stepped out with a folder in his hand. Derek said, "You need to sign something." I stayed under the floodlight. I said, "No." He threw the folder onto the hood of an old pickup. Derek said, "Statement, you admit you used the void ticket to set Audrey up. That you suffered no actual harm, and that you don't believe I intended anything serious." Mike stopped sweeping. Mike said, "That sentence needs medical help." Derek glared, "Stay out of it." I opened the folder with one finger. The statement had been typed by an adult. It framed the incident as a misunderstanding caused by relationship stress and competitive academic pressure. It said my existing admission meant Audrey's action caused no material damage. I looked at Derek. "Your father's lawyer wrote this." Derek said, "A family friend." I said, "Tell your family friend no." Derek stepped closer. "My father can still contact Millstone. Character matters. If they hear you engineered a public humiliation of your girlfriend, maybe they rethink how safe you are on campus." I pulled out my phone. Derek laughed. Derek said, "Always recording." I said, "Always threatened." Mr. Lawson came out of the garage holding a tire iron. Mr. Lawson said, "Derek, right, the boy with the expensive car and discount morals." Derek glared. "This doesn't concern you." Mr. Lawson pointed at the garage sign. "My property, my employee, my cameras. It concerns me." Derek lowered his voice. Derek said, $10,000. Sign it. Take the money. You already won. I looked at the envelope he pulled from his jacket. Then I looked at the garage camera above the bay door. I took the envelope with 2 fingers and held it toward the lens. I said clearly, "Derek Walsh offered me $10,000 to change my statement about Audrey stealing my exam admission ticket and his role in planning it." Derek lunged. Mr. Lawson slammed the tire iron against the metal doorframe. The clang stopped him cold. Mr. Lawson barked, "Next step decides whether I call your daddy or the cops first." Dad's truck pulled in behind Derek's SUV. Dad got out slowly, still in his work jacket. Dad said, "I vote cops if he moves again." Derek looked from Dad to Mr. Lawson to Mike to the camera. His confidence thinned. Derek said, "You people love acting righteous because you have nothing to lose." Dad walked to my side. Dad said, "My son had plenty to lose. That's why he learned to keep proof." Mike lifted his phone, "And I have the wide shot." Derek grabbed the folder but left the envelope when Mr. Lawson put one boot on it. Derek drove off fast, tires chirping against the gravel. Dad watched him go. Dad said, "Rich kids drive like consequences are optional." Mr. Lawson picked up the envelope with a rag and said, "Not in my lot." We filed a police report, sent the video to Principal Marsh, Dr. Levin, Millstone's liaison, and the foundation. Ms. Keller from the foundation called the next morning. Ms. Keller said, "Ethan, your scholarship remains secure. The documentation shows you were the target of interference, not the source of it." I put the phone on speaker so Mom could hear. Mom covered her mouth. Dad stood by the sink and nodded once. Ms. Keller continued, "Millstone also confirmed that any attempt to pressure you into changing a factual statement will not affect your standing." Mike, listening from my laptop, whispered, "University lady has entered the boss level." Mom said, Mike whispered, respectfully, "The final district decision came 5 days before graduation. Audrey lost senior honors, competitive scholarship certification, and school endorsement for any application requiring academic integrity confirmation. Derek lost senior privileges, athletic recommendation support, and faced a conduct note for conspiracy and attempted intimidation. Mr. Grant was removed from recommendation authority pending personnel review. My record remained clean. My Millstone admission remained public and final. Audrey sent one last message that night. "I thought if you missed the exam, I could catch up." I stared at the message for a moment, then she sent another. "I didn't know you were already gone." I replied once, "I was not gone, I was working." "You were stealing paper." She did not answer. Graduation morning came bright and windy. The football field was lined with folding chairs, blue banners, and parents waving programs. Seniors lined up behind the bleachers in gowns that smelled like plastic and heat. Mike stood behind me with "Void ticket, valid future" written inside his cap. I said, "You need help." Mike said, "I need better markers." Audrey stood near the middle of the line. No honor cords, no decorated cap, no circle of friends fixing her hair. She held her name card with both hands and looked straight ahead. Derek was not there. His father had withdrawn him from commencement after the garage bribery video reached the board. Mr. Grant was not on the faculty row. Ms. Harper was, sitting upright and clapping for every student who passed. Principal Marsh gave a short speech. Principal Marsh said, "A future is not a piece of paper someone can steal, but integrity can be lost in the attempt." This year reminded us that character is not shown by what we almost get away with, it is shown by what we choose when nobody has stopped us yet. The senior rows shifted, everyone knew. Audrey stared at the grass. Names began, students crossed, families cheered. When Audrey's name was called, the applause was polite, thin, and quick. She walked fast, took the diploma cover, and returned to her seat without looking at the crowd. When my name came, Mom stood before Principal Marsh finished saying, "Ethan." Dad stood beside her. Mike's mother shouted too because she said any boy who fed Mike during finals counted as family. Principal Marsh said, "Ethan Miller." I crossed the stage. Principal Marsh shook my hand and said quietly, "In good standing, congratulations." That phrase landed deeper than the applause. In good standing, not delayed, not accused, not missing an exam, not standing outside a gym with an empty pocket while my future burned. Ms. Harper hugged me at the bottom of the stairs. Ms. Harper said, "Go build something they can't steal." I said, "Yes, ma'am." After the ceremony, a local student reporter stopped me near the fence. Reporter asked, "Ethan, everyone knows about the stolen admission ticket now. You still got into Millstone. What do you want people to understand?" I held my diploma in one hand and the Millstone folder in the other. Mom stood near Dad's truck, wiping her eyes. Dad held the passenger door open. Mike hovered behind the reporter until his mother pulled him backward by his gown. I said, "Audrey stole my exam ticket because she thought my future was printed on paper. She did not know my future had already been signed." Reporter asked, "Do you think the exam ticket mattered at all?" I looked across the parking lot. Audrey stood beside her mother's SUV, holding a plain diploma envelope. No cords, no cameras, no Derek. She looked at me once, then looked away. I said, "To my admission, no. To the truth, yes." Reporter asked, "Any final words for her?" I said, "She did not steal my future, she only revealed hers." That clip traveled farther than the hallway video. Some people called it cold, some called it fair. Mike called it, the cleanest paperwork knockout in Westbridge history. That evening, Mom taped the millstone letter beside my diploma photo on the fridge, Dad fixed the porch step and said college boys needed stable exits. Mike came over with a grocery store cake that said, "Congrats, Ethan," because the bakery still hated my name. He said the extra E stood for evidence. We ate it anyway. A week later, I packed for Millstone's summer bridge program. Audrey's top choice school placed her application under conduct review. Derek disappeared into a private discipline program his father called a reset. Mr. Grant resigned before the personnel review ended. Westbridge moved on to summer jobs, dorm lists, and freshman advice, but I kept one copy of the voided ticket in my folder, blue mark across the back, tiny tear near the corner. Not because I needed it, not because it held any power over my future, I kept it as proof that some people will steal a door key without realizing the door has already opened. She thought she had taken my chance. She had only taken a dead barcode, a useless paper, and the fastest path to showing everyone who she really was.